Hello, everyone. Charles Dobbins, the multifamily attorney and the host of the Multifamily Investing Academy podcast. And we're back with another special guest with another great episode. And let me just tell you something. This guest would be fantastic as a guest if he just showed up himself. But today he is on to explain to us, to show us what he's been working on for the last, I think, 2 years, because I think I've been trying to get him on my show for 2 years and he's been totally dissing me. And so, but now I've got him, and listen, I already know what he's going to present. It is a game changer, and you've got to check it out if you are looking to be in the multifamily business. And first, so what we're going to do first is I'm going to introduce my buddy, Paul Worcester. Paul, say hello.
Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here, Charles.
Is that such a candy? I mean, Chris, Paul, say it like you mean.
Can you lean in and get up?
He's gonna get. We got to get him fired up.
I am thrilled to be here.
There we go. Yeah, that's a little.
My energy. Build. Yeah. I start slow and my energy builds.
Yeah, that's okay. That's that is true, because I saw that happen the other day. And also with him is his chief marketing officer, Chris Greco. So Chris is involved in the new venture, and we're going to wheel him in here in the conversation. But first, Paul and I are going to talk multifamily, and we're going to talk the good, the bad, and the ugly, and how he got started is one of the most phenomenal stories. And let me just say, you all know my past in the insurance business and how I hated the insurance business because it is cutthroat, backstabbing, conniving. Oh, I just detested it. And then I come over and I love the multifamily business because you just meet some of the nicest people. Everybody's out there to help you. It's so great. And let me just tell you, Paul Worcester is one of the true gentlemen of this industry, and it is so great. I want you to get to know him. I want you to know him like I do. And so, Paul, welcome. And welcome to my show. It's so good to have you. Finally.
Thank you so much for having me.
Finally, you deem me worthy. So.
Well, it's wonderful to be here.
Yeah. So, Paul, your story, and I'm going to give you the ball in a moment, I think, and if you got the whole deck page put together, your story is just an absolutely inspirational one, especially to any of my students, any of my clients who are looking to get started in this business. Here I just gave you this big glowing presentation opening. I'm like, because you Paul, you really, you had nothing. You didn't even have any talent to bring to this game. And look at you now. Yeah.
It's
and
true.
He's going to agree with that. He's going to agree. So, all right, Paul, I'm going to give you the ball because I really like your story. I'm at it.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me, Charles. It is great to be with you. I'm going to talk about Simplifyy, and which is my new startup that is transforming the multifamily property management industry. But before I get to that, I want to talk about really three things: the market, multifamily market. So most of you listening are in this business in some capacity. Multifamily apartment market. Number two, I'm going to talk about there's a lot of problems in the market, could be better, but I'm going to talk about what I think is the root, the big one, the big problem in this industry. And then I'm gonna share what I feel is the solution, and then how my company is addressing that solution. But first, I want to share my story. It helps to. I love to hear people's stories. I always learn something from someone when I hear where they've been and where they're going and kind of how they got to where they are, because context is so important. So let me do that here. I grew up lower middle class. We didn't have money. I was the oldest of four boys. My father was a pastor for 35 years. He passed away 3 years ago. But this is our front yard, playing football. This was a typical day in my early life. My brothers are there, and then these are just neighborhood kids. And we grew up, we had a great childhood, never had more too much, and always had enough. My mom was a third grade school teacher. Dad was a pastor of a small church. And I was planning to be a pastor up until about age 20. My major in college was biblical studies. We played basketball all up through high school, and then in small college, I got my college paid for through that. Fortunate enough to play basketball on a small college level. And then my major was biblical studies. And so at age 20, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and was exposed to business for really the very first time. I had 2 jobs prior to that. I had been a landscaper, a personal landscaper. Well, apart from working for my dad, we worked from age 7 on. But my first, quote, real jobs was I was a personal landscaper for a family. And then I ran the fitness center at my college. Those are my two jobs. And I was exposed to Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Robert Kiyosaki, and it was life-changing, paradigm shift. I had never thought about being an entrepreneur. What was that? If you asked me, how does someone, create a business that is passive income, I had no idea how that even worked. So when it was explained to me in his book and his books and what he shares at a very, very simple level. I mean, he doesn't go real deep. That's just what I needed to hear. And so I made a life transition right there. I decided that I was going to be an entrepreneur. And so we had some family meetings. We sat in our living room, my 2 brothers and my father, and we kind of said, we're going to go into business together. And we decided to go into multifamily real estate. And
okay.
So
hold on, put me in because the here you are. Did you let me ask you, no judgment or anything. Did you graduate from college?
I did graduate.
Okay, with a major in biblical studies, or did you change it?
With a major in biblical studies, a minor in Greek.
Oh.
So I was 20, so I was a couple of years into college. And this was middle of college. Yep.
Now, why did you go to a seminar? Did you go to, or just read the book?
I read the books. It was I think the book was given to us by a friend, and somebody. I think a friend gave it to me, and I read it and just consumed it real quick, and then started reading more. And it was really, Charles, it was like an opening to a new path. I can't say that it was the entire answer. It was just there was another way for the first kind of time. Interesting.
And so your whole family, did you get any pushback? Did people say, you're crazy? What are you thinking? You've spent all last 4 years doing this. What was the feedback from the crowd?
We were a very close family. And so having family meetings was nothing unusual. We all went to college locally. So my brothers went to a college in Salem, Oregon, and played basketball there. And I went to a college in Eugene. They would have been graduating high school. Joel was a year behind me. Jesse was 4 years. And so they were high school and then just getting into college. I guess I'd be like second or third year in college at that time. And we just had family meetings all the time. I mean, they weren't meetings, they were just hanging out. But we just kind of started talking about what it would look like. And, we didn't have any money. So it's not like we were sitting around like, well, we'll allocate this resource over here. It was just a dream. And my dad got behind it and was excited to support us. And he's always been a huge supporter of us in everything we did. And so he made the decision to mortgage his house, and it was a second mortgage. So he already had a mortgage. Yeah. And this was everything that my mom and dad had. They didn't have a 401k. They didn't have, truly everything was in this. And so they gave us $200,000 and we went into business together, that day basically. And so our passion, our goal, it was just a dream at this point, was to buy multifamily properties. And if we could have a little bit left over at the end of the month to in the form of cash flow that we could use to live on at first and then become wealthy, that was the dream.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. You burnt the ships, you kind of took that leap. But the fact is, most people get pushback from other people in their lives saying, "Oh, you're crazy. You're never going to succeed." And sounds like the whole family was on board. That's pretty cool.
It was, yeah. And there was various levels of being on board and at different timing. I can't say it was all the same moment. You know how life works, but basically you're right. We did all get on board.
Yeah, that's so cool. Good for you guys.
So
you probably had to, not only did you burn the ships, you probably had to burn those clothes that you're playing football in, because those were never getting clean again. I'll tell you that right now.
Yeah. I think we had a few times where those never made it really in the house. They just kind of were thrown in the dumpster out back. Yeah.
Backyard. Absolutely.
Yeah. So this was 2006. And then that same year, our family meetings occurred, and this same year we bought this property. This is a fourplex in Salem, Oregon, and we bought a package of 16 units from a guy, and this is 4 of the 16. And so overnight we became landlords. We collected the rent. We performed I showed up in Salem and performed evictions or represented the ownership in evictions. We ran these properties early on, and the guy that we bought them from moved from Salem, Oregon, because he lived in this city, and he moved to Kansas City.
Okay, now hold on, because I've got 3 questions for you. First off, because I know everybody's going to want to know this, how you got started. How'd you find these deals? How'd you finance them? And then this is going to be your first foray into property management, or did you hire a property management company? Okay.
No, we did it ourselves. And I personally think doing it yourselves is there's benefits in that you just learn what's what. So when someone later on says, well, this is how it's got to be, you can say, well, I've been there. Not everyone goes through managing their properties, but for us, our path, it was helpful because we learned how it works. I mean, we were doing it from day one, so we did manage them ourselves. Okay, to your other questions.
Hold on, let me just say, Paul, this is how I teach my students: is nobody loves your baby as much as you do, and a third-party property manager is not going to do what you need them to do to keep that thing going. So it's so good to hear you say this. So go on.
Yeah, I think if you want to create wealth, I think that at some point along the line you have to figure out what you do best and focus there. But early on, you don't want to have these big gaps of risk along the way that just you're exposed. So we knew kind of how the industry worked day one because we were doing it. Well, we made a bunch of mistakes. I can't say we were good at it early on, but we had very few units. So we financed this. So this was 06, mid 06, to give you an idea of the timing. And there was the low money down stuff. So we bought these properties, and I think we put 5% down. We got traditional financing. It was sort of that CMBS style. It wasn't a Fannie. It wasn't a local bank. It was like a interim, maybe a 3 or 5 year interest only. I don't remember the terms.
A bridge loan. You got a bridge loan.
I don't know that it was. I think it had a longer. I think it was maybe not due for 10 years. So I don't know that it was really a bridge, but it didn't fit in a real easy cat. There was a lot of that stuff out there, if you remember.
Yeah.
It was different. There's a lot of lenders out there that they just went away in 2 years later. So we got a loan. Yeah, like that. We got a loan. It was it absolutely was they weren't doing it on our income, because we didn't have a bunch of income. So it was based upon the performance of the property and how we found it. This was a time in Oregon, I think basically the West Coast, it was very difficult to cash flow at this time. If you picture, it went right up, the prices were going up, and then they crashed, of course, in 08. But at this time, it was difficult to cash flow. And so we looked for months and months and months, and we called on stuff and we looked at stuff, and this was the closest we could find, and we about broke even. So when we bought these 16 units, self-managing, we made a little bit of money. We didn't lose money month to month, but it wasn't much. And so, that's how we found it. It was in the newspaper, to answer you. It was an ad in the newspaper. Yeah.
That's amazing, because I know later on in our discussion, we're going to find out you tend to do pretty well with the newspaper. I think you're the last person to actually read one. But
that's true. I didn't think about that. It may have been a Craigslist ad, actually. I don't hold me to that. I think it was either the newspaper or a Craigslist ad on this one. So it's been a while. So we visited. I flew out and visited this gentleman in Kansas City. And I spent like 60 to 90 days, somewhere in there, just shadowing him, just walking around, watching him make offers on properties, and learning, because he was further along in real estate than we were. And everybody was further along than we were, because we'd owned property for months. And so I learned a lot from him, but the best thing we learned by far was that there's other markets out there. Oh my goodness, it's not everything's like, Oregon. And so we in literally like a month after, so I was there for 90 days. I think I flew out in March. By September, I had moved. My wife and I had moved with our children. Our daughter Allie she was pregnant with Allie there, and Allie's 12 now. And so we had moved out to Kansas City, and we were just building a business in Kansas City. So we switched from flip of a wrist from Kansas City, or from Salem to Kansas City. And so we started growing our business there. We made lots of offers, and in Kansas City at that time, the numbers were easier to cash flow. So we were able to.
You told me a story years ago that you moved from Oregon to Kansas City because the numbers made more sense than they did out in Oregon. But even then, when you got to Kansas City, the MSA of Kansas City was still too pricey for you. You had to look outside of that market to find numbers that worked.
Well, there was a sub-market of Kansas City. Kansas City's 2 to 2.5 million people, depending on where you draw the lines. But we were in a sub-market, and I visited the gentleman in one sub-market of Kansas City. So that's all I looked at. I didn't know Kansas City at that time at all. And I think this is a great lesson that we learned along the way that I think applies, is know where you're good at, and where that Warren Buffett talks about this line that you're competent within, right? Your competency, area of competency, or circle of competency. And so we were looking in a market of about 75,000 people, a sub-market. So very quickly, I mean, if I'm working full time, very quickly, I knew by memorization all of the multifamily properties by number. I mean, I knew every property over 15 or 20 units in that market pretty quickly, because I just drove the roads and called and looked at what was for sale. And so we mastered that market pretty quickly. And that was really important. We bought 40 properties in a 2-year period. And we borrowed money from an uncle here and there. A friend lent us some money. We did a lot of owner financing, creative financing. That was our first foray into real estate. We still didn't have money because we were living off of the $200,000 that we got from our father. So we had to be. If we weren't creative, we couldn't have grown the business. Period. So,
Paul, I got to tell you that it's so good. Everything that you are saying is exactly what I teach my students. And one of them is, you've just got to master your market. You've got to choose that market and become an expert in that market. And once you choose that market, you've now closed the number of opportunities that you have to focus on. It is a finite number. And like you said, you drove around, you knew every opportunity that existed in your market. And that was it. So you knew that one of these owners had to say yes. You had to make a sale to one of those owners, and that's how you're going to get in the business. Now, talk about the 40 in 2 years. What size property? What was duplex all the way up to what?
Yeah, these were small properties. We bought a handful of single family, And then they were all in the 2 to 8 unit range. I think we bought 4 or 5 single family just rentals, but they were all two to 8 unit properties. And so these were anywhere from like 20 to 40,000 a door, very, very low costs. They would be in the C, they would be C plus or C properties. And the most entry level rents in the market is where we were playing. That was what we learned.
Now, I just want to listening. You know what I teach is how to own 1,000 apartments in 5 years. And what I tell people is you start with 20 in the first year. That's all you need to do. Folks, listen to what Paul has to say, and you'll see that what I'm saying is absolutely accurate. So go on, Paul.
Yeah, that's a good goal. I like that target.
Yeah.
So by being an expert in that market, my goal was when there was a problem, whenever a problem occurred with a property, and the slide up here is Robert Kiyosaki's his cash flow quadrant, and then we were on the right side becoming business owners and investors, but we were looking for assets, right? That's what we were doing, something that would put money in our pocket while we slept. And my objective was, as soon as someone had a problem, because if someone doesn't have a problem, if I own a multifamily property and I'm competent, I'm smart, I have no problems, there's no death, divorce, money problems, and everything's smooth sailing, am I going to give away that property at a price that there's some discount or room to play with, but opportunity to add value? Probably it's going to be less likely at the minimum, and maybe not likely at all. So I was looking for the real problem, someone who had a piece of property that they were like desperate to get rid of it. They're up at night, couldn't sleep. That's the kind of thing that we're looking for. And,
all right, hold on. I got to stop you again because you're killing me, Paul. It's like, why don't you just take over the Multifamily Investing Academy? Because you were saying everything, the same thing I do. And what I always say is every seller has a problem. And it's your responsibility to figure out what that problem is. Now, even the person that thinks everything's going along swimmingly, they got some type of a problem. You just need to figure it out. It could be a very small one, but you just don't know. But every seller has a problem, and you have to figure out what that is.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think some problems are easier to find out than others, and some problems are bigger than others. And so we were looking for the bigger problems. But I totally agree. No property is ever perfect, and nobody's ever perfect, of course. So I agree with that. So we began buying these properties. We were operating them ourselves, and we built up a nice little business. We had some cash flow coming in. We were buying properties every month. For us, we realized though that we probably wanted to grow faster than we were growing, and we didn't. For the business, the way it took us a lot of time to find a property, put it together, close on it, put the funding together, and then take over the management. It's a lot of work to do that. And so we thought, I wonder if we could do this at a bigger scale. I wonder if we could buy more units. And so that got us thinking, and we began looking in maybe early 2009 at some bigger properties. And in 2009, late 2009, we bought that property in the top left, which is a 60-unit property. And this was, I talked about a paradigm shift, big time paradigm shift. This probably added almost overnight. I don't say overnight because we had to raise the rents, but we did it really quickly. This was in the category of like a major problem that we solved. So I'll give you some of the details that I didn't give on the last one, Charles, and this will be fascinating, I think, to some people. So this was owned by a guy out of, I think, Iowa, but the bank was in Nebraska, and this property is in Kansas City. So right there, you've got this trail of
absenteeism.
Right, absentee. And so the rents, I am 90% sure this is accurate. It's been a while, but I believe the average rent on this property was $240, if you can believe it. So yeah, it was
2008, 2009?
2009. Okay, now let me be very, very clear that the market rent for this property was probably anywhere between 5 to 575.
Oh my.
So let me be clear. That was not what the rent should be. But the in-place rent at the time of closing was $240. So I think it was 40, maybe 38 or 40 of the 60 units were occupied. I mean, this was a mess of a property. So I think there was between 2 and 2.2 million of debt on this property. And we got in touch with the owner, and he quickly said, I don't know, it's beyond me, talk to the bank. So we got in touch with the bank, and the bank was in trouble. So I'm not going to name the bank. They're a small bank, and we found out very quickly that they were feeling pressure from the FDIC. They were being looked at. And so we started making proposals. Well, what about this? And what about this? And pretty quickly, it became clear that they wanted to keep this, they wanted to make this a performing note under their books versus like a risky loan. That was what they wanted. So the deal that we made with this bank was, it took months to do this, but we closed at, I think it was 1.2 million, I think exactly, it was 20,000 a door. And they wrote us a check for 80,000 at closing. So we put no money into this. And the reasons, there was money, there was work that needed to be done with this property. And that was the story we shared and sold them on, is that we're going to take care of your property.
And was this when the Worcester boys stopped eating ramen?
Not immediately, because we didn't make anything that first month, with vacancy like that and the rents like that. But like I said, very quickly, we had this leased up. I want to say it was 2 to 3 months. It was like 95, 100%. The rents, a lot of them were month to month. So we just turned them real quickly to the market rents. We more than doubled the rents at this property in a very short amount of time. And it was just bringing up to the market. We weren't pushing rents. We were just bringing it up there. So that was our first, I would call it, bigger property or apartment community. And once we did that, buying a duplex after that is just a little different. You look at it a little differently, and you go through the same closing process, but it's like, well, I can buy this many units at one time. So we begin to buy larger properties in the metro of Kansas City, and that was the path that we took for the next 10 years. That was what we did. This is what you're seeing on the screen is 18 of these are the first 18. I think it's maybe 18 of the 20 first properties we bought. This is about 3,000 apartment units that are represented here. Wow. And so this took us through about 2016, 2017.
So it took you 10 years to go from 0 to 3,000 units.
Approximately, yeah. Well, let me clarify. If you say we started in 2006, then I would say, well, yeah, 2006 to 2016. That's about right. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So then, 2017, we begin to buy bigger properties and we begin to develop properties. So 5 of the 6 properties here we developed, and then the 6th property there on the bottom right is a tower, a 34-story tower that we did a redevelopment, a repositioning, but we didn't obviously build that. That's a 100-year-old property. So, but all of these properties.
Let me guess, that's gonna be like your figurehead, your fountainhead property. I mean, my guess is when you drive into Kansas City, everyone sees that building.
Well, it's in the downtown central business district. I think I know it's in the top 10. It might be top 5 tallest buildings in Kansas City. Wow. But it is the largest multifamily tower in the entire Midwest outside of Chicago. So it's a wonderful, wonderful property. And so, yeah, these are all $20 to $50 million deals here that are represented here. So
okay, Kansas City's been very, very good to you, but so I got to ask this question: Seahawks or the Chiefs?
Well, we were never big Seahawks fans. We were Northwest, okay. But Oregon Oregon versus, Washington. I wouldn't say we were big NFL fans really, but everybody here is a Chiefs fan. You got to be a Chiefs fan.
I know. Yeah.
Mahomes is special.
My brother. My brother's a professor out at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and I didn't tell you this before, but my brother's out there on West Gregory, and he's still a Pats fan. So I get that.
All right. So I'm going to run through just a visual of our bio. We started the company, bought our first apartment community, got to 1,000 units,
Amazing.
2,000 units, as I said, 3,000 units, 2016, and then began developing. And by the time 2019, I'll get to this in a second, but I left my family company end of last year. This is what we had done since inception. We'd acquired 4,000 apartment units. We were a top 10 Kansas City apartment owner. We'd been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing list 3 times. We had built a company of 140 employees, mainly in property management, but also in construction and some in investments. We'd acquired over $400 million of apartments with our group of investors. I want to clarify, we always had a profits interest of maybe 15 to 50% of the syndication. So we didn't own all of this ourselves. We worked with a group of, it ended up being about 100 investors, but it was a core group at the start of much smaller. Many of them invested over and over again. And we generated annual returns, cash on cash. So not an IRR, not a someday number we think the equity is going to be. It was a cash on cash of 20%, which is extraordinary. And a lot of that was the market. I have to give credit to. We were buying really well at the market. And now I'm going to move to a different part of my story. So about 2016, that bubble popped up. We're in property management. We're running multifamily, and I thought there ought to be a better way than what we're doing. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, we're about average. We're doing kind of what everyone else in the industry does, but the industry just sucks. To be blunt, the experience of the owner and the resident and the employee and the investor all the way around. I mean, it's a great business to be in. Let me be very clear. We went from nothing to multimillionaires in this business, and I'm extremely grateful for that. But the day-to-day operational side of this business, the way that the renter is located, to the way that the renter pays rent, and the administrative process, the accounting, the reporting, this entire business is not good. It is very antiquated, and so. But I didn't know how to change it at this time. I was just part of the problem. And I started realizing, though, if this was going to change, I had to find a tech partner, because we had tried little small changes and they got eaten up in the industry. They just got swallowed up by the way things are done. This is the way we've always done it. This is the industry way. And that was just any small little innovations were gobbled up by that. So I started searching for a tech partner, and someone I knew they needed to be not just a tech technical person, but they needed to be a leader, someone that I could converse with and we could strategize over how to build technology to change this industry. And so I did that, and I eventually found my partner, Jake. I'm going to get to him a little bit later, but that was the beginning of Simplifyy, and I'm going to talk about the market and then the problem, and then I will get the rest of this. I'll talk about my startup, Simplifyy. So the market, I'll cover this in 2 slides.
Okay, hold on. Let me kind of give a recap here of what we're talking about. When you got into the business, you didn't follow what some of these gurus teach, where you just outsource your property management, give it to a third party, put your feet up on the ottoman, and no tenants, toilets, or trash, just travel to eating and tennis, put your businesses on remote control. That was not the way you and your brother started the business. You guys got in there, rolled up your sleeves, and you took on every aspect of the property management business. And then you grew so that you were one of the big players in the little small town of Kansas City, but you were still doing all of the property management yourself, just as if you had outsourced it to a third party. You had a property management company that you guys ran. But the thing is, and this is, could not agree with you more, because I've interviewed so many property management companies. The fact is that no one has a corner on that market. Everybody has the same mousetrap. I remember the first one property management company that I hired to do, he managed about 5 of my properties. In the initial meeting I had with him, he said, it's property management. It's not rocket science. And he was right, but guess what? I had to fire him because he did a lousy job at what he was doing. So you're at that point when the bubble pops and you say, listen, the rest of the world is advancing technologically in their industries to be light years ahead of what everybody else has done in the past, except property management.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second, because you brought that up. Let's talk about property management before I go further. So we've been in property management for a long time. We built a business from nothing. We got asked every year, multiple times, people came to us and said, can you manage our property? I'm not happy with what we're getting. And 100% of the time we turned them down. We never managed for anyone else. And that's a hint as to this business. This business there's not a lot of margin in it. We managed the properties because it was a service to our investors. We were on the ground. If there was a problem, we said it's on us. We're not going to call someone and wait. We'll make the problem fix the problem that same day, or we'll figure out what's going on because we own the company. We lost a little bit of money some years. We made a little bit of money some years. Let me tell you, if someone could do as good or better job than us managing the property, we would have outsourced that in a second, because we had 140 people to manage. There's turnover, there's hiring, there's HR, all that kind of thing. And they had, I would say, we tried to do some really nice things for our employees, but I've got to be honest and say the employee experience, it left something to be desired.
Okay, hold on. Let me just Paul, I owned an insurance firm that had 35 employees. I got out of that business and swore I never wanted to have an employee again or manage employees. And so when I got into multifamily, the way, we set it up, it was fantastic. I don't know how the heck you did it with 140 employees, man. I would not want that headache. 35.
Well,
put me in an early grave.
Well, I think you have to have a passion for it, and we cared about our people very much, and everybody does. Most owners of businesses do, but the problem is the experience of the employee. What are they doing? Are they happy? And can you give them tools to do meaningful work? Right? As a human being, we want to have purpose. We want to do meaningful work. Yes, I want to be paid fairly, but I would argue in this industry today, and this is where I'm going to cover this later, but there's enormous amount of waste. And so consequently, the employee is doing a lot of meaningless work. They're pushing paper or, type data entry. I mean, that's what a lot of our employees did, and they do to this very day. So, I'm going to move on if that works, Charles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to cover the market and the problem, and then we'll get to Simplifyy. So the market, if you're in this business, it is a wonderful business to be in. Here's some stats. It's huge, an absolutely huge business. $3.3 trillion of value just in multifamily in the United States. When you say, well, what are the biggest properties in this country? There's probably a very small market. No, it's huge. Over 50 units. There's 5 million of those units. And guess what? They're building more every day. There's 300,000 that have to be built every year, says Harvard business study, just to keep up with demand. So it's a huge growing market. And it's not going to go away. It meets the second most basic human needs. So right now we're in this coronavirus world where our lives have changed. A lot of industries that we're experiencing right now are going away or in process of being really, really hurt. Where you live is not one of them. People always need food and a place to live. So great business to be in. Let's look at the residential property management business, our industry, which is the people and the systems and the software and technology that supports that multifamily industry. So $76 billion industry, very large, very fragmented. So 850,000 employees, that's excluding all the realtors, and there's 275,000 companies in this industry across the United States. So averaging 3 people a company. So if you're to think about the industries that you know, and think about, mom and pop, antiquated, the way we do it today is the way it's always been done. This is your poster child right here. I mean, if you rented an apartment in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you basically experience what it's like in the year 2020 today. It has not changed at all. Yeah, we've put some stuff online and we do a couple things here and there, but by and large, the industry has not changed. And so that is the industry, and that is leading into what I feel is the problem in the industry. And that is there's just been a total absence of innovation. So let's compare property management, residential, to an industry that has been totally innovated, and that is ride sharing. So you could have had, we forget this so fast. This changed. I think it's amazing how fast this changed. I mean, I don't even really remember what it was like to ride in a taxi, but it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it's only 5 years ago that was the norm, and now you don't even think about that. So this is what's coming if you're in this industry, I really believe. So you could have had a successful taxi cab business 10 years ago. Your P&L is great. Your employees are happy. You're raking in the money, and you didn't know there is this tsunami of innovation about to overtake you in the name of Uber and Lyft, and it is basically made the traditional taxi cab industry obsolete. And so this industry is investing $2.53 per payroll dollar into innovation, right? I pull it up, and in a couple clicks, I have a driver wherever I need to be. Well, that's simple. What we kind of take for granted is the hundreds of millions of dollars of technology that has been built to make that simple. That is not an easy thing to make that happen. And so there's been a lot of money that's been invested to make that a reality for us. So compare that with property management. We're investing 3 cents of every payroll dollar. There's everything you need to know. There's an 84x delta between these two industries. And if you're in this industry, you know this. So there's waste in this industry, all right? So this is untapped profits that are just waiting to be released.
Hold on, Paul. Hold on. Before you get to this slide, I want to add a comment that kind of ties the last slide together with this slide. If you look to see what type of innovation has occurred in the property management side over the last 5 to 10 years, you're just looking at forms of innovation that make the user's interface easier, so to speak. Meaning, okay, great, Yardi is now online, so I can check my online service, when I'm on a cruise ship and going down the Danube River. Okay, but that's one thing. What do they call them? Package rooms. Because of Amazon, everyone wants a package room. Okay, that's an innovation. But none of these innovations, absolutely none of them, have touched the NOI at all.
Correct. In fact, and maybe they quote save you a little bit, but there's 3 other things that are taking the NOI up, the cost part of the NOI up to offset it. So I totally agree with that. What
we're talking about here is innovation that drives the NOI. We're always talking, we are value add propositions, drive the NOI. None of the technology that's come out drives the NOI. And that's what you have focused on.
Yeah, yeah. And what we realized is that it took starting over. You gotta wipe the slate clean, and you gotta start all over with technology. If you try, and I tried to do this. We spent $2 million in technology building Simplifyy, incubating it, and really playing in a sandbox on our own units before I left my company, Worcester Investments. And it just didn't work, to be just blunt about it. When you try and throw in a piece of innovation to this old antiquated way, it'd be like, imagine if Uber said, Mr. Taxi Cab company, we want to bring, our technology and kind of integrate it with you. Good luck. I mean, you got a guy, they don't even use smartphones, and he's trying, it's like, it's speaking a different language. So
I was so excited when a cab had the ability to take my credit card, where I could swipe my credit card. Oh, wow. Hey, that's fantastic. But did that make drive anyone's profits any differently? No, it just made my daily usage of a cab a little bit easier.
Yeah. And I think that's, for those of us that are in the industry, I think that's a false sense of, we feel that there's innovation occurring. We see these tech companies popping up, and I'll get to that in a second.
Yes.
But let me run through the profits, or the waste here.
Yep.
So we have waste occurring. Well, you say, I don't think so. Where could there possibly be waste in our industry and the operations? Well, you say, well, how is a property advertised? What is the process by which we do that? And I'm not going to go into great detail, but let me just put it this way. The waste in that category alone, where you pay some big company to be hosted along with all of your competitors in an internet listing service site, and you pay them gobs of money, $400 to $1,000 per month per property. It's incredibly wasteful. Does that actually add value to the owner? I would argue it does not. So then you have administration costs and IT costs. This is all of the softwares and hardware costs, your printer, copier machine that sits in every clubhouse that you typically lease, all of these things that support your people. That's really what admin and IT is. It's the stuff that makes our people perform a little better. Well, I'd argue it's really antiquated, and it's really fragmented, and there's a lot of waste in there. Now we get to the people side of things. So people are critical in any business, but what are the people doing? What is the job description that we ask of them? And so I would argue that over the coming years, everything around the people's, well, everything in the industry, period, but job titles, what am I expected to do? What's my title? It's going to totally change. It won't be recognizable in the coming years. And so the people that show up every day at your clubhouse, there's waste there. And I don't mean they're wasteful people. I just mean that they're not given the tools to be successful and efficient. And then you have your property management and bookkeeping waste as well. Now you move over to the revenue side, and we take for granted as an industry, this will change, that there's delinquency and eviction costs. There is a cost to that, make no mistake about it, but we can figure that out. We don't have to ever this is happening right now, and Simplifyy is part of this. There's insurance that can capture this. There's insurance products that you go through a vetting process, and you say, what's the likelihood that this person's going to not pay their rent? What's the likelihood that this person's going to go to eviction? And you have an algorithm, and you have a dollar cost, and guess what? You now capture this in a flat rate part of your business. The way it is now is, I might have at my property, I might have close to zero delinquency. We've had properties that have zero delinquency at times, and zero evictions. And you're like, oh my goodness, things are great. This is what I can plan on. And then something changes. Maybe you get a different community manager. Maybe subtle things change on the property. Maybe the industry's changing around there. And all of a sudden I have 7 evictions going on right now. And you're like, what the heck happened? How could this possibly have happened? Well, you're not able to plan for it and make it a part of your business. You're just a victim of kind of what you're told on the P&L 45 days after the fact.
Yeah.
And so that's going to change, and it's going to be wonderful for our industry. And then you have these hidden and rising costs. So These costs rise about 5% a year. So every 6 years, your costs are going to go up by about a third. So whatever you think your payroll is and your benefits and all the things you're paying for at that property, guess what? They're only going to go up every year. And then you look at the hidden costs. So these are the things that we don't like to talk about in our industry. And if you're in this industry, 98% of you never would partake in this, but there are the bad characters that this happens. I'm a community manager, and nobody knows what I'm doing. I've got my own things going on here, and I have a vendor relationship, or 2 or 3 or 5, and I get a kickback, or I make a little side deal on the business we're doing. Now, at a minimum, the owner should be aware of this, right? I think we would all agree. You could say, well, if that was just a gift that they wanted to give them for referring them business, maybe I could get behind that, but at least tell everyone, make it transparent so it's above board. The problem is that occurs and the owner's not aware, and so most likely there's things happening that are not in the best interest of the owner. So that's waste going on. Now let's get to, I touched on this and you brought it up. There is the argument, and people go to, I actually think there is a lot of innovation occurring in our industry. I see all these tech companies appearing and they're doing these very, very neat things. And yes, that's true to a point, but the industry's still fragmented. To your point, how is my NOI being helped by these companies? I don't think they're really adding a lot of NOI value. I think they're making iterative changes, and just look at the industry itself. The payroll goes up. All the normal costs continue to go up while there's this innovation occurring. Well, then it's not. I would argue then it's not real innovation. All right. So that's where Simplifyy comes in. We are the first end-to-end platform where we just replace all this noise. We replace all these integrations that you've got to worry about, and I've got to plug into this one in the right way. And we step in and we act in lieu of the property manager. But here's the difference: we're built on technology. So yes, we're going to deliver all the things your property manager would deliver and a whole lot more. But the way we do it, the way we deliver that, like an Uber in contrast to a taxi cab, the methodology and the mechanisms are vastly different. And so it's a fragmented industry, and we're trying to simplify it. So the solution is that it's technology has to be. Today, Simplifyy is launching from closed beta as we speak. We're well capitalized. I invested $2 million in this company, and I have an investor that invested another $2.75 million.
Hey, can I just tell everybody that's listening, this guy was a biblical studies major, for crying out loud. He just invested $2 million into his company, huh? Come on.
Well, God's been good to me. That's true.
Exactly.
This is unusual. As a startup, we're 100% founder funded. So we haven't gone out to raise money yet. We will probably at some point, but we are a tech company transforming multifamily property management. I would argue in many ways, we are the first to ever do this. We are working today on hundreds of units. So this is not an idea that I threw up these slides and we're talking about this. Right now we're leasing. Right now we're processing accounts payable. We're reporting for owners. We're conducting maintenance right now on hundreds of units. We've just been in a closed sandbox beta on units that we wanted to perfect this and get this ready to go to market, and that's what we're doing right now.
Okay. All right. So those are all on like Worcester properties. They're
my properties. They're investor friends, and they're Worcester properties. That's correct.
Okay. Gotcha.
And we've not gone out yet to other folks yet. So what do? We really do 3 things. We delight our residents. Your residents under our ecosystem, they're just going to have a better experience. Period. They're going to stay longer and pay more. I'll get to that. We are passionate about the second part. We're solving homelessness. So if you go to your property management company and said, what are you doing to provide real money through what I'm paying you to offset homelessness, to do some good for our world, our community. And the only honest answer that because I was this, is we don't have much to give. I mean, yeah, we could give of our time and we all want to do that, but I'm talking about real money. I'm talking about life-changing money that could actually influence and change lives. There isn't the bandwidth because there's a lack of technology. So we are passionate about solving homelessness. And number three, don't forget this, we're going to grow your profits. So you mentioned, Charles, the NOI or profits, they're going to grow under our program. So we have built this for the biggest apartment operators in our country. That's what Simplifyy is built for. You are our target customer, but our product works the same if you have 50 units. So if you have a big portfolio, you give us 1,000 units and your residents are gonna stay longer and pay more, adds to your revenue. We are gonna fund, as part of what your monthly subscription, we're gonna fund 10 homeless families and take them through a homelessness to self-sufficiency in a 90-day period of time with financial literacy. We don't do it ourselves. We partner with an amazing 30-year-old nonprofit. It's included in what you pay to us. We're so passionate about that. And then last, you're going to add $600,000 to your bottom line. Yes, that's right. $600,000 bottom line to your NOI. Huge numbers. So here's the first case study that we have.
We're going to get to a case study because this is important, because let's bring it down to the granular so people can really understand what's going on here. And let me just tell you, when we're done, I'm going to give you the comparison on my Monday night call with my students. I had one person that said that they don't like the way, there was one thing that they didn't like about your scenario, and another guy who said, sign me up. I totally get this. And I will share with you both of their perspectives, and you'll appreciate it. So let's see the case study here.
Yeah, so we did our first case study. We took a portfolio of 560 units in August of 2019, and that's the red, and we compared how they were operating in the categories that we will add value or reduce your expenses. And then ours is the purple. This was early on. Our numbers have gotten better than this. So on the total there on 152, we've come way down from there. But at this time, we were able to save on the far right. You add all of these up, $131 per unit per month, which is huge. I mean, if you were predicting your cash flow and you use that figure of 131 a month, that's pretty good cash flow per unit. And so that's $73,360 per month in savings on this 560 unit portfolio. And this is in advertising. So apartments.com, your placement services, your website, your resident functions, banner signs, that's all your advertising costs. So we take that on, we bear that as a company. We say it's a flat rate, it's part of our subscription. And so that's included. The admin and IT, that's your phone, your internet, your screening, your softwares, your hardwares, the trainings, all the things like your apparel for the employees that's thrown into your chart of accounts. All of that we bundle included in our subscription, and that drops down. And then your office payroll. So this goes up every year. This is your community manager, your assistant manager, your leasing agents. This includes their payroll taxes, their benefits, their employee discounts. All of it is going to come out to in that range of $60 to $80 per unit per month. That's where it's going to shake out at. And we include that bundled into our property or into our subscription. You never have to worry about that again. And then the management and bookkeeping costs, which can range from maybe 3.5% to 7%, that's bundled into our fee as well. So we were thrilled with this result. It was an outlier. We don't believe we're going to be able to deliver that kind of a result. So we've projected, and we're very confident in this, that it'll be $50 or more. So if you move to Simplifyy and you bring your units over and you say, well, we're about to roll this out. Actually, Chris and I were just on a development meeting with our team. We're going to roll this out on our website. This is the first we're sharing this. We're going to come out with a free product that you can input. You just take your P&L and look at last year or the trailing 12 and just put in the totals for these right in there. Just bam, 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 bam in these categories, and just look at it, what it's been. And then we'll send you a report. Give us your email, we'll send you a report, and we'll show you, here's the Simplifyy subscription, and this will be your savings. Not everyone's gonna be 50. Someone might be 42, or someone might be 82. That's gonna be in the range that it'll be, and every market's different, right? So ours is a flat rate subscription. Let me put it this way, if this works where I am, which is Kansas City, one of the most affordable markets in the country for of size, because it's the flat rate fee, it works really well when you get to the West Coast and the East Coast and the South, and in some markets where costs are greater. And so we know if it works in Kansas City, which it does, we know it's going to work even better in other markets where the costs are higher. So we believe we'll save you $50 a unit a month. All right. So what does that look like?
Go back for a moment here. Go back one more slide. One more slide. Okay, right here. Let me take it from here. So just so everybody's listening to this, and this is how we can kind of like really put this into play as like a case study. What Paul is talking about here is each one of these red bars represents a line item on your trailing 12 financial statement. The advertising, marketing, the admin, general and administrative costs, the office payroll, the management bookkeeping, part of payroll, part of property management, delinquency and evictions, that goes above into the income section as an income reducer. So all of these categories, what Paul is saying to do is to carve them all out and just put into the equation now one flat rate times the number of units every month, and that's what the number's going to be. And in this particular case, on a 6-cap property, you're looking at an increase in valuation by about 500 units by about $13 million. That is unheard of. So now what you're saying, now go forward one slide. Now what you're saying is when we get, now this is what I want everybody to listen to, when we get to look at that new property package and we want to get the best offer out there, we should take that trailing 12 financial, send it to you folks and say, and now granted, we're going to get into the issue of geography in a moment, but right now, just theoretically, we would send you that trailing 12 and say, if I sign this property up with Simplifyy, how would you impact this trailing 12 is what you're saying you would do.
We provide that as a free service. Yeah, Chris will talk about this, but yeah, we would be thrilled to do that. And you and I were talking before, Charles, and you brought this up. This is especially powerful in that early stage of you're going to buy a property. We work great for you have a property, you've owned it for 10 years, and we can take over and start making you more money the next month. But when you're going to buy the property, there is one hurdle that it takes to work with us. We have to have a smart lock. All right, our system doesn't work without a smart lock. So it's a budget area that you've got to plan for. Now we know that without our program, without Simplifyy, we know there's an ROI that makes sense just in putting a smart lock without us. It's a wise investment to make. There's been studies that have done that. But we require that. And so if you can bundle that in to your closing costs, right? Your CapEx closing costs line item, it really makes sense, because then you include it or a portion of it in your loan, and the bank's paying for it at a low rate.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So
okay, and we're going to get into the discussion of smart lock, because I'll tell you something, Paul. Part of the issues that I had on my Monday night phone calls, some people didn't know what a smart lock was, or what it did, or what is it? Why do we need it? So let's dig into that as well.
We can cover that, absolutely. So this is the same math. We add a zero, so it's we have 5,000 a month on a 100-unit property. So this is big time money. I mean, if I owned a 100-unit property, 5,000 would be a reasonable, cash flow number. Might hope for 10,000, something like that. But this is meaningful money to your bottom line. And so Simplifyy, next to your spouse, we could be your best partner in this business and the operating part of your business. So that's 60,000.
It's true. Don't deny it.
Well, no, I was looking at this last time we put up there. I'm like, as I tell people, I am like the Don Rickles of multifamily, and I was like, Don Rickles would say like, you obviously never met my wife before. She just lies in the bed. So, but go on.
All right. So that'd be 60,000 a year if you took a reasonable 7 cap in today's market. That's high, but that would be 860,000 in added value to your 100-unit property. So really powerful what we can do there. So I want to capture just briefly in a visual. Well, who else does Simplifyy need? You guys are software, but what, I have to have someone else do something else? No. We are a total solution. So this is the 6 major categories of property management, and we deliver it all.
So just think, everybody, it's a flat rate cost for 4 or 5 line items on your trailing 12. That's it. You carve them all out, you stick in one number, and you're done. And
bingo.
And we said on Monday, when you receive a trailing 12 on a new property package, your NOI that you're evaluating is only as good as how successful the owner has been at property management. And if you can beat them like a rented mule on those costs, you're always going to come up with a better number than he has. You're going to be able, because remember, we're not buying a property, we're buying cash flow. And if we can drive that NOI to be as high as it possibly can, the property is just more valuable. It just is.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. So when we were in the business early on, we made errors on our underwriting. We didn't know what they were going to be, and we had to learn that, right? You can read books, but you really know by doing it. And so after a while, we learned that, oh, this guy's way high, or his rents are way low, and so that was really critical. This could be your secret weapon in the business. So no, we are brand new, guys. This is the industry. You mentioned smart locks, Charles. I mean, smart locks really 2 to 3 years ago were very, very new. Really in the last year, they've become more accepted. Guys, I'm telling you, smart locks let me put it this way. They won't make dumb locks before too long. That's how we're about to switch over to where all locks will be smart. We're about to get to that point. And
a lot of that had to do, I think, with the Airbnb world.
I think so.
Yeah.
That was a critical driver. The using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and then now 5G is affecting this in a big way. And then the smart home access. So you've got to have smart home or smartphone, smartphone usability. So if I'm a resident, I've got to be able to quickly use that, and that technology was not there 5 years ago. So yes, that's what we deliver. We deliver everything that your property management company would, and more. So we get this question, and we can go into detail offline. This is not the place to go way down into it, but how do you guys work? Like what do you guys actually do? What are you doing behind the scenes? And how can you actually save money? I don't understand is the question we get at times, and I don't believe it. Let me just share this. This is where we think we're going to be to. We're not yet to this today. We think we're going to be at approximately 1/10 of the costs that are in the industry today. All right. I'm going to give two examples. Let me give 2 examples. All right. We do the advertising in-house. That means we have a team and we're running Google My Business. We're running internet digital advertising ourselves. The cost savings is extraordinary versus you saying, I'm going to go out to apartments.com and I'm going to pay them subscription I'm going to pay these other 2 marketing companies, and because there's just bloat, right? There's all these companies that got to make a profit, and they're just going to pass it back on to you in higher costs. We absorb that because we don't have to make an enormous profit in advertising, because we got these other categories. We can make a little bit of margin on each one. So we save a lot of margin on advertising. All right, now let's look at leasing. How does, we take for granted in this industry that you have a human being at the clubhouse, and you receive a person, they come in and you you do a little intake form, and then you go and show them a unit, or maybe you do an email schedule, and you go and show them a unit. That's and they don't lease, and then you got to schedule another one, and then by the way, they don't show up for their appointment. All of this time, you're stuck.
Paul, I got one for you, and I learned this one from a property manager that worked for me, is that if you don't show every prospective tenant the unit the exact same way, you could potentially have a Fair Housing Act violation and cost you hundreds of thousands.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great point. You certainly, in everything you say, from everything you do, you have to do it the same for everyone. That's a great point. So I'm looking at myself in the mirror, and I'm going back to where I was 3 and 4 years ago before we started to develop this thing. We just think, well, of course you have to have a person there to show them what we don't.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I know where you're going with this. Shifting the paradigm, getting the blocks.
Yes, but here's the part we don't. The amount of money is enormous. So I have to charge a higher rent. I've got to make money some other way to pay for that leasing agent to be there every day. Yeah. And so if you can reduce that leasing agent's costs to another way, right? You might save $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 just right there annually off your property. So
it's all boils down to those smart locks and what you can do with those things.
It's a critical piece. You still have to manage the process, right? You can't just throw in a smart lock and call it good. So part of our service, we're open 24/7. Within seconds, we respond. And so they'll have questions. Which address do I go to? How do I get there? Tell me the features. As we'll walk them through. Sometimes we'll FaceTime and we can show them, what they're looking at, and they have questions. And so here's a paradigm shift for you. We got this early on, and people said, oh, you will never be able to lease without a person there. And that was a big thing. Let me tell you,
I've been doing this for 30 years, Paul, back when you were a little boy. Yeah, you don't know what you're talking about. Oh my gosh.
Exactly. We had 9 leases last week. We had 0 people showing them. I think one of the 9 leased online and never saw the property at all. They just saw the visual tour, and they said, I've got enough information to lease, and they leased right there. The other 8, they went and saw the property, and they did it on their schedule. So if I work and I get off work at 9 p.m., I get to go look at that unit. Guess what? I don't have to dress up, or maybe I'm smelly from coming after work, and I don't want to deal with people, and I just want to look at my next home and not get pressured into buying. And guess what? I can do that. And we've set it up to where this is where there's other parts of it. You can lease within seconds on your smartphone now.
Paul,
so
before I rent a hotel room at a Marriott, I always go walk the unit before I rent. No one ever said,
that is a great point.
Think outside the box here, guys.
Yeah,
Charles, if you think about the magic of Simplifyy, just say it was a break even, right? Just say you as a multifamily, our product was a break even.
Just from a cost standpoint.
Still go for it because of all the convenience, the predictability, having the business. It's the same as saying, look, if Uber costs you the same as calling a taxi, if Airbnb, searching for an apartment or a hotel will cost the same as Airbnb, you still do it. So that's the magic of this business, that it's not only a massive convenience, but it saves a ton of money.
And the thing is, when you say convenience, I know that one of the bullet points you talked about before is happier customers. So it's, the convenience is on their side as well, but I'm thinking about more of the convenience on my side.
Yeah, I'm talking strict. I mean, we had a meeting last week where this was a big multifamily owner, where he said, when we showed him, he could predict, he could have a leading, indicator. He said, man, if I call my property manager and ask them, for, what my current, P&L looks like, it'd take them 2 weeks for it to get back to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
When Paul built this leadership team, we all hopped on because we see that the magic of this is the cost savings, but even more so the convenience and being all knowing, this crystal ball, given to your business. It's huge.
Yeah. You guys both brought up a great point. Let me clarify something, because this is going to be, this is recorded and it's going to go out with a time date stamp. Our price will go up. Let me be very clear. This is first users. This is to take it to market. We want feedback. We want to give you a really compelling reason to do business with us. After we start onboarding thousands of units, our price will go up. We've already modeled that out. So if you're looking at this, take advantage, because we're willing to commit to you the lowest price that will ever be out there. So so let me share what's on the screen now is a glimpse, just a glimpse of our technology that's working. We've got over $2 million that's been invested in this tech already. On the left is a screen. This is a screenshot of our technology working right now today. It handles 100% of the communication between resident and management, 24/7 within seconds. Either phone call, I call in, it's immediately transcribed, and it's captured and recorded forever. I text, I say I want to text in and this is anything at all. So it's not limited. You don't have to pull up a form and say my work order. I mean, this is ask questions about my rent, questions about renewing, including maintenance work orders. So it's all captured there. Now, wouldn't you as an owner love to know what's going on at your property with the resident relationship? Now we can show you. We can plug you into this stream, and you can know all of the questions that are coming from your residents. It's never been able in the industry. You've never been able to know. One of the big questions we would have investors, Charles, you've seen this. Investors would fly into town. They're syndication partners, and they want to go talk to the residents. Right. And I do it too. It's smart. It's smart to do that. Hey, how are you liking it? What are your biggest work order complaints? And they want to interview the residents. It's because they have no idea what their experience is. And so what if we could plug you in and get that in? By the way, this is basically real time that we can show you this. So it's also a great leading indicator of if there's a problem brewing, like maybe there's an industry change or job problems, it'll come through on their communication. So on the right is our in development owner app. So this will roll out later this year, and it will be included as part of our subscription. But imagine as an owner, if you had all of the data you wanted, some of which you don't even know you need yet, but we're working on it, at your fingertips right on your smartphone. So this would be financial data. And I'm talking more than your P&L, balance sheet, variance report. I'm talking about predictive analytics that show 1, 2, 5 years out with high degree of accuracy what your work orders and turns and P&L type activity is going to be. For the first time in the industry, we're capturing that data. So the problem with our budgeting, Charles, you know this, and we did this, is we budget, we look at last year, we kind of look at the new contracts that are out there, the services, and we kind of say, I think it's going to be this, and you put together a P&L or a budget for the year, and you present it to the owners, and you agree on it. The reality is we're stupid. We're making those decisions without data. And it's a huge difference between you have units that are in really good condition and there's no work order backlog. And then you have another property that has horribly been mismanaged in work orders. There's all this backlog. There's this CapEx that needs to be done. And there's a vast difference, and yet we will have similar budgets for the year for both properties. And so we're working on solving that in a big way. Then there's the unit data. So you can show you pictures and data in the unit, the rents, the delinquency, if there is any in a unit, you can click down and drill into that. We're gonna give you monitoring data, so you'll be able to look what's going on at the property, and then you'll be able to see a live feed of all the activity, every event that you wanna know about, leases, maintenance work order. If you wanna get into that kind of detail, you can go there. So that's a glimpse into our technology. And again, to clarify, this is not, we're not inventing new technology really. We are taking technology and systems that work in other industries today, and we're applying them for the very first time in the multifamily industry. And this book is a hugely educational resource. I encourage you, if you want to get a glimpse of what's happening out there in what's coming in the future and how our companies change, like it's interesting to think about, well, how did this industry, the Airbnb industry, emerge? How did the ride sharing industry emerge? This book shares how it is, and it's actually some very fundamental principles that apply in there, and we're just taking those and applying them in multifamily for the first time. This is our passion in solving homelessness. We give $1 per unit per month. So that may not seem like a lot, but that's $100 a month or $1,200 a year that is going right to 501c3 to help homeless people get back on their feet. And so we're so passionate about that. This is the 3-step process. And how do I get started? So you go to our website, you sign the risk-free sign up with us for the risk-free subscription. Then we handle the onboarding. We work with communicating with your residents. We put on the smart locks. We handle all of that. There is a one-time cost of approximately $500, or you can get that added to your monthly subscription for a period of 2 years, and then it goes away. You own the smart lock. Number 3 is you start growing your profits month 1 that we're working with you. So,
let's talk about the smart lock and get a little bit more in detail, because this is one of the things that the 2 students on my call the other night couldn't, one got it, the other one didn't. So one of my students heard what you had to say and said, I'm already doing this on my property by myself. This is the only way to go. I have, I don't even see the tenant before I rent to them. They go online, they fill out the form, we do the credit check. Everything is automated, including the lockbox code that they send to them, so they can go walk the unit themselves. And if they like it, they can just sign up online with the lease online. So he has taken it. He's not as sophisticated as you are here, but he totally gets how the leasing process has to go in the future. You do the comparison to the other student who is, privately, you didn't know this, Paul, but I'm getting text messages privately, and the person's like, this is crazy. There's no way I'm going to lease one of my units to someone that I've never met before. And there's, I need to know, and the application can only tell you so much, but I need to see the person face to face. And, Ted Bundy convinced people, face to face. So you can always fudge that part. But what my point to her afterwards was, if you're looking to get to 1,000 apartment units, that's your goal, you're not going to spend your time meeting all 1,000 tenants. It's just impossible. Bill Marriott doesn't do it for everybody that rents his units. You shouldn't do it for your apartments either. You've got to shift that paradigm.
Yeah, I have two thoughts there. So number one, to your point about the fair housing, that we all have biases, right? We all see something. And so if you have to see a person,
like for instance, I looked right at Chris Greco and I knew I was better than he was right away. So that's just, yeah, of course.
So we all have internal biases.
I concur. Oh, look at him. He's trying to throw legal terms at me now. So
I would ask, if you have to see the person, then there may be a risk there in fair housing potential.
Oh, great point.
But that's just something to consider. And then the second thing I would say is this: there is a spectrum with anything. So we're on the early wave of this. We're the smart locks and Airbnb. This is all new to real estate and rent tech and prop tech. And so we're just getting the early adopters. Okay. So there will be people that won't adopt this for years. I mean, you own a fourplex or a single family home and it's your baby and it's a hobby and you just want to own it forever. You might be 20 years later and not really have changed your business. That's fine. You run your business the way you want to. But for those of us in the industry that want to scale, as Charles mentioned, I want to get from X to Y. I want to get from A to B in an efficient manner, and I want to go up with my business. This is the only way. You have to think about every part of your business needs to be able to scale. And so, So let me share about our team because the people behind this product and business are everything. And so we've built an amazing team. This is me on the top. Jake is my tech partner, and then Russell is our investor. That's our co-founders, and then we've built an amazing leadership team. Chris is on this call with this podcast with us now. Is our chief marketing officer. He has had an amazing career in sales and marketing. Helped
Chris,
lead
did you use your high school picture for that one?
You like that? That's funny.
Yeah, my gosh, you've been with the company for 10 years now?
Yeah, exactly.
So he helped scale a company leading marketing that sold for over 200 million. He was most recently with Symantec, and we're thrilled to have him. Vance leads our technology reporting to Jake in that category. He turned down a leadership level at Amazon to stay in Kansas City. Sarah just joined our team in the last 60 days, and she was most recently with a top 5 single family owner operator in the country. She was personally over 17,000 single family homes in many different markets. Before that, she had a decade of multifamily experience. And then we're in the Kansas City area. We have partnered with Tarsus, and they are a fractional CFO partner. They work with some of the highest performing companies in our market. And then below Sarah, we have all of the categories of property management that you would think of covered here: maintenance, leasing, resident retention. So let me share. Our purpose is to love our neighbors at Simplifyy. That is everything that we do at the bottom level. Beyond making a profit is that. With our values, we have 4 core values. This is how it guides how we behave. We are going to behave with true grit in everything we do the right thing, whatever it takes. We're not going to be a mile wide and an inch deep. We're going to be great at something before we would move on to another thing. We behave by adulting, meaning that we're not going to hire and work with children. That's not our business. We're going to work with adults and expect that out of them. And then we realize that we are pioneers in this space, so we're going to be leading in that regard. Where are we going? We are just launching now live. We want to be at 5,000 units end of this year, 10,000 units next year, and then double annually. We want to be the leader in this space. So we want to surpass Greystar and become the leader in this space. And we want to work with the biggest players in the business, large apartment owners. If you have a fund like RET Ventures that is funding multifamily rent tech startups, we're a good fit. And then we'll either collaborate or work with property management companies. We're looking at acquiring some of them and or joint venturing with some of them. So here's our growth forecast. Again, starting this month, we're in, and we want to be at 5,000 units end of this year. And so I will end on that. And I thank you so much for having, Charles. If there's other things you want to talk about, great. But I'm through with my part.
Okay, that's fantastic. Bravo, bravo, bravo. Chris doesn't even clap. Okay. Anyway, Chris, I was pretty good. Come on.
I have so much unbridled enthusiasm that I don't need to clap.
Hey, but weren't we right about Worcester? I mean, he did really start to ramp it up as he went along. Do you notice that he got a little bit more agitated, a little more animated? I did pick up on that. Okay, one question.
I'm feeding off of your energy.
Yeah, oh, thanks.
I'm feeding
one
off of
question
your energy, yeah.
I have for you is geography. Where, I mean, you're in Kansas City. You're in, breadbasket of the country, but how can this be grown to other locations? What's your plan for that kind of growth? So, because I'll tell you, let me just preface this by saying that, I've got about 15,000 people that get my podcast every week, and they're multifamily owner operators. They get what we talk about here, and they're going to be like, okay, Paul, come on, bring it. Let's do this. I want you to drive my NOI. I want to make my offer look better than the other guys. How can we get our hands on you, Paul?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's two parts of this. So we need to deliver for our customer. All right. So we're not going to just sign people up if we don't have utmost confidence that we can deliver. So we're intentionally, Charles, being flexible with that answer. I'm not going to tell you we're going to go here and here and here. Because we're going to see where the demand is. We're going to see where our receptivity is. So here would be a response to that. If you can gather a group, maybe an ecosystem of me and other investors in a market, and you can bring a proposal or talk with us, and we can come into a market in a big way, we'd be very interested in talking with you. That's how we're going to grow. Is we're going to pick markets that are really receptive to where we are, and that's where we'll focus.
Gotcha. Okay, that is really, really cool. So, folks, give me a call, because I'll put together that group to get Paul out here, or in Charlotte, or in Miami, or in Houston, or in Dallas, all of those places where you need this type of access so that you can buy more properties and beat out the market, because it's a tough market out there right now. And we're right in the middle of this coronavirus thing as we shoot this, but even without that, it's still a tough market, and you need that edge. So let's talk. I want to help Paul, get in all the big markets. That'll be fantastic. So awesome, Paul. You are an inspiration. As I said, you're a total gentleman in this business, and Greco, you're a good kid. You're a good kid, Greco.
Thank you.
Hey guys, thanks for being on my podcast. It's been fantastic, and we are going to be keeping in touch. This is going to be a lot of fun. So
thank you, Charles, so much for having me. Look forward to talking soon.
Yep. Talk to you soon, guys.